Hi, I'm Dustin Perry. I'm the CEO of Kingfisher Metals. I'm joined here with Gayle Febbo today, and we're going to discuss the first drill results from the first ever diamond drill program at our district scale Goldrange project. Okay, so let's get into things here. Before we go any further, though, I really want to highlight the real ethos in this company, which is driven by discovery. Gayle and I have worked together for a long time, and we've put our brains together on this project and given it 110%, and we're really happy to have outlined a new area of mineralization in an emerging gold camp. So without further ado, let's get into this. But before I go any further, I urge you to look at our disclaimer on our website. We are geologists by nature, we're optimistic, and we do have a lot of forward-looking statements because we do think this project has a bright future. So please have a look at that. And now we will get into this talk. So Goldrange is located in southwestern BC. There's a lot more information on this on our website or on our previous presentations where you can get a better idea. So for the sake of a shorter conversation here, we're going to go over this fairly briefly. We sit within the Yalakom Fault Network. We're calling it the Yalakom Gold Belt. It extends for several hundred kilometers in southwest British Columbia. It's really anchored by the Yalakom Fault, which is a crustal scale fault from the Cretaceous time period. Braylorn and the Braylorn district sits at the southeastern end of this long belt. And the Braylorn mine is quite well known. It produced 4.2 million ounces at 17.7 grams per ton. Within this belt, you get the full range from deeper mesothermal systems like Braylorn up to epizonal systems like Reliance and what we're seeing at Goldrange. The infrastructure here is quite good relative to other areas in BC or the world. We are a 25-minute drive on an easy road. You can drive a car from Tattle Lake to our camp. There's logging road access now to the north end of the project and about 12 kilometers away from our cloud drifter trend at the southeastern end of the project. There are mines in this general area. So Braylorn was a mine, but then outside of this gold belt, you get Highland Valley, which is one of the largest copper mines in North America, and you get New Afton that New Gold's operating to the east. So the focus of this talk is going to be on our drill program. We've talked about regional results already, and there will be more regional results to come, but this is about drilling, and this is about the cloud drifter trend. The cloud drifter trend occupies about 1% of the 367 square kilometer Goldrange project. This is the target that really got our attention, which is why we picked up this project. There was a historic soil anomaly that covered this area, and what we set out to do in 2000 was evaluate and confirm this anomaly that was last worked in 1988. The work we did in 2000, coupled with the historic work, outlined an area over 3 by 2 kilometers with 50 soil samples grading higher than 1 gram per ton, up to 22 grams per ton. Additionally, we took 312 rock samples across this trend that averaged 6.26 grams per ton. So really, really spectacular grades, incredible surface expression. But Gayle helped us unlock the structural story here and really put together a model that confirmed to us that we were looking at the same rocks in essence as what you get in the Braylorn district, that they experienced the same deformation events at the same time, and the likelihood of finding a gold system here, in our opinion, was quite high. So this is what that cloud drifter trend soil geochemical anomaly looks like. And you can see outlined here on the left part of the screen within the cloud drifter zone, you can see the area we drill tested this year. So it occupies less than 10%. And we didn't drill particularly deep on this either. So there's a lot of room to grow in 3 directions. But one thing to highlight here is that we just started testing this anomaly. This program has returned really good results so far with only 4 of 14 holes, but it's just starting because there's a lot of other targets across this anomaly. For example, in the south at the standard zone last summer, we drilled above a historic adit with our backpack drills and returned 10.68 grams per ton over 6.9 meters. Many other targets to be tested here. So what we see right now is a bright start to a really prospective future at this cloud drifter trend. Before we go into detail about drilling, though, we need to highlight what this geochemical anomaly looks like compared to other well-known anomalies. And the cloud drifter trend anomaly is really comparable to some well-known projects, such as Barkerville, which is being developed by Cisco right now. And then you've got White Gold in the bottom. which White Gold Corp has, and Coffee, which was acquired by Newmont from Kaminak. So, the fingerprint indicates that there's a large system here, and our initial drill results confirm that. Gayle, can you touch on the geology here?
So this view here is of the cloud drifter trend, and this is really the main focus of our 2020 mapping and surface work. So the geology here is a bit complicated, but in general, you get a variety of host rocks, andesite, sedimentary, volcaniclastic. These are deformed during fold and thrust belt formation, and there's a prominent thrust fault that goes right through the Goldrange or the cloud drifter zone. Following that, we get the emplacement of these pink and purple units, the intrusions, and these turn out to be really important units for us. And I think the drilling really further reinforced that, how important it is to be close to those. Structurally, we get a lot of different hosts of mineralization. So we see quite a variety across the trend here. We have breccia bodies identified at Langara, the historical adit, at standard adit. And now we've identified a new one in drilling that we'll talk about as well. Other important targets are, vein style mineralization, contact focused mineralization, fold hinge, sulfide mineralization as well. So quite a diversity. So these intrusions are really important to the story for probably several reasons. We need to be close to these zones. And if we look at the mag, the mag signature, what we see is that these blue areas are really well correlating with the intrusions that we've mapped. And as Dustin mentioned, we have a lot of cover here. So a lot of areas are still a question mark. We don't have them very well characterized. What we really liked seeing are several areas with these similar maglo signatures. And more than that, they have a close spatial association with known mineralization, for example, at Langara, standard, and essential. And what's even better is, for example, in the essential and standard area, there is evidence in outcrop of alteration that's proximal to an intrusion. And you won't see that alteration unless you're close to the intrusion. So we do have evidence that we're close to it. And these potentially represent pretty good sized targets. And so we look forward to advancing these areas undercover and figuring out a little better what we have there.
Yeah, we are looking forward to expanded drill programs in the future where we get to further outline the cloud drifter zone, but then start taking some step outs into these other, they're within the trend, but they're more regional to the cloud drifter zone. And we think there's a high likelihood of finding more mineralization. This has all the hallmarks of a robust gold system. So let's get into the cloud drifter zone and what we drilled this year now. So the cloud drifter zone is a small portion of that entire cloud drifter trend. And within the cloud drifter zone, we focused our drilling within a relatively small area. The area we tested was primarily within the forest. You can see there's 6 drill collars on here that we completed our drilling from. And one thing to point out is that a lot of our drill holes were collaring in areas where we had a high degree of confidence. We, in doing the first program, the first pass, we wanted to be as risk averse as possible. But, we drilled a lot of long slope parallel holes. So we never got that far below the surface, but we wanted to cover a broad area. And in a lot of those, we were testing conceptual targets. A lot of the intrusions weren't completely mapped. They were mapped with the odd outcrop. And a lot of the inferences were made from magnetics and IP. The concept held true. So these are the results we got from the initial 4 of 14 holes. In our first hole and a second hole, it was a bit of a letdown to us, and we believe that is due to the rock conditions and the drilling, and we will get into that. But when we stepped down to hole 3, we really started getting to test these broad areas of alteration and mineralization associated with these intrusive contacts and just really prospective areas. But what really surprised us was what we hit in hole 7, where we got to hit one of these really sexy looking breccias, beautiful mineralization with really good grades, hitting what could be ore grades over potentially ore width on the first program really bodes well, especially given that this mineralization did not outcrop and it was essentially a blind target. Before we go any further though, I will say that the reason why hole 7 is here and hole 4, 5, 6 aren't here is because once we saw hole 7, we wanted to prioritize that because with the lab, because we hadn't seen that yet within the cloud drifter zone, that style of mineralization from the lower quartz diorite. And we were hoping that we would get that result back during the drill campaign and be able to potentially adjust the program if it made sense. But with the lab turnaround times, we never got those until recently. So we continued the plan as we had originally planned it. So this is what the drilling looks like in plan view over that portion of the cloud drifter trend. And what we really like is that you can see a wide distribution of mineralization. Over meaningful widths, it's mostly near surface, especially the tops of hole 7 and hole 3. But then we're also getting mineralization in the lower intrusions as well. And what I want to point out here is that you can see this soil anomaly here. This entirety of the soil anomaly is incredibly high grade. So the cutoff here is for where you're seeing blue is 50 ppb, which is generally considered to be a soil anomaly pretty much anywhere. This orange reddish color is generally above 250 ppb or a quarter of a gram. So, we have not tested the soil anomaly yet. We've only tested a small portion of it, and the results we're getting so far are really encouraging. So without further ado, let's look at the sections and talk about this. So hole 1 and 2 were drilled at the highest elevation within this area. It wasn't our top priority target. It did have a high degree of confidence though, due to the surface exposures and the amount of sampling we did in that area. And I encourage you to look at our previous presentations from the spring where we presented a lot of graphics on this. In this area, we did take some encouraging backpack drill samples, 8.3 meters of a gram through the area over here, which is about 40 meters west of where we drilled. We drilled underneath these trenches you can see on the left-hand side of this image here. And what we found was the rock was incredibly broken. We're drilling through a deformation zone, highly faulted area, and the diamond drill did not seem like the best tool for the job. Future programs will probably look at using an RC where you get 100% or near 100% recovery. The top, I believe it was around 45 meters of these 2 holes, we were getting close to 50% recovery. So really horrible recovery. And what we noticed on surface was that these veins were really recessive in nature. They were highly oxidized, the sulfides in them, and really crumbly at surface. And in drilling, we actually didn't see them, but we did see areas where you'd get a broken zone, which might appear like a fault, but then you'd get a little bit of red oxidized material that would light up with an XRF with good arsenic numbers. So we believe those were arsenopyrite veins, but they weren't returned and they were likely washed away with the drill fluids. So we haven't written this target off, and we do intend to test it with an RC drill rig next year that might be able to produce a better sample. Gayle, do you want to take over here and start talking about hole 3, where we really got into the intrusion?
Sure. So the target to the west that we just talked about, this is part of the thrust deformation zone. So, brittle fractures, that type of thing. And then hole 3 got to test a different style, which is essentially broad mineralization centered on the contact. So you might expect contact mineralization to be very focused right at the contact, but what we actually see here is because of the rheology difference between the sedimentary rocks and the intrusions, you get broad fracture development across there. And so these areas where we have elevated gold are 50 to 100 meters thick. So it's actually a pretty nice corridor. And what I really like about this target is this upper contact zone is around 20 meters from surface, and it collars in mineralization. The lower contact is about 50. So these are very close to surface, and these targets follow that contact. And as far as we know, that continues into the slope. So a really nice target, very easy to follow up on with future drilling. And this hole came short of the lower intrusion, which is actually looking quite nice. I'll just mention on the left here, we have a photo of the mineralization style. So in hole 3, we encountered vein style mineralization. So we didn't find a breccia there. And we didn't find what I would interpret as a feeder to mineralization. So what we're picturing is broad diffuse alteration that follows this contact in a sub-horizontal way. So this system is fed by something subvertical, and we don't really know where that is yet. But I really like seeing this kind of distribution. And then if we go to the next slide. Okay, so for now we're moving east, and this is, I should say, these sections all view to the east as well. So hole 7 was a really nice opportunity to have a look at both of these intrusions. So these intrusions are different age and different composition. And what could potentially be important here is the lower intrusion is more competent. So it might cause different or more fractures. We're not, that could be an important feature. But what you can see is that both of these intrusions have good mineralization along in the contact areas. The breccia we encountered in the lower intrusion, the quartz diorite, we're really happy to see. I would love to say that we knew it was there on surface and we targeted it, but this is a broad drill target, and this is just a blind discovery. So we're testing a concept, and we got lucky to hit this. So this breccia, it's really nice. It's multi-phase, so numerous brecciation events, and I would interpret that as being probably close to a structure or a feeder that's bringing a lot of this material, this gold-rich fluids up. And what we see here, which we haven't seen yet, is this sooty sulfide cement to the breccia. And as it turns out, that's associated with high-grade gold. And that sooty sulfide, it's probably a tetrahedrite tenantite, which we do see around, and probably a lot of other fine sulfides. We have a bit more work to do on that, but what we do know is it's important and it's a new style, and that's really nice. So
I will touch on that. So this interval over 9 meters graded 0.1% antimony. Which is, a really high antimony grade, which is indicative of a higher level epizonal environment. And it also, that's indicative of there being tetrahedrite there. Additionally, there were really high tellurium values and bismuth values and pretty high copper values. So it is a polymetallic signature that is gold rich. But just the amount and variety of minerals and elements you're seeing in this is really indicative of the type of fluids you would get in a high grade system.
Yeah. Another thing I want to point out as well, this, when you see the drill table, you say, okay, this is at 400 meters, but you have to put this into context. On the section, this is only 150 meters from surface. So this is still, surface proximal intercepts.
And another key point is this quartz diorite, we didn't have a lot of control in it, just due to it being in the forest with a bit more cover and really dense forest. But up to 300 meters or maybe even more east of here, we were seeing some pretty exceptional grades in mineralized quartz diorites. Those were highlighted in a news release we did earlier in the summer or in the spring. Samples, in the 6 to almost 10 gram per ton range in heavily mineralized quartz diorites that looked fairly similar to this. They weren't breccias per se, but they did look fairly similar, quite fractured and just stuffed with sulfide. So we think there's a lot of potential for this lower quartz diorite, but we also think there's a lot of potential for the upper diorite as well, testing these along strike. And you really want to hit, you got that rheological contrast, which for people that don't understand what that means, rheology is really just the competency differences in rocks. And when you get a sandstone next to a really silicified intrusive rock, they're quite different. And fluid flow coming from depth always wants to take the path of least resistance. So it will come through those pathways, and that's why you get mineralization focused around these contacts. And this quartz diorite might have an even stronger rheology contrast due to the increased silica content, and maybe that's better. We focused on the upper diorite to start because it was more mafic, which is often a good host for mineralization. But we did see some mafic rocks in proximity to the quartz diorite. We believe we saw basalt down there as well. So it could be a combination. But the key is you want the rheological location, but you also need a feeder. And we think this breccia represents that kind of trifecta of, you're getting mineralized fluids near a feeder structure and you're getting the rheological contrast.
Yeah, I'll just add that, sorry.
Go on, Gayle.
I'll just add that, a lot of these intercepts represent subhorizontal features. I mean, we didn't return the concept at the deformation zone, but the thrust deformation zone is low angle. The upper intrusion and the lower intrusion are both low angle, but something is bringing that up. The ultimate target here may likely be subvertical, and that's not as easy to hit with the drill, especially not having control on surface. And that's kind of the game moving forward, I would say.
Yeah, and with that in mind, I'll comment on, investors are looking at comparables and what other companies are putting out. And I've seen some really exciting results coming out of new discoveries, new grassroots discoveries from other projects. A lot of these I've noticed, though, some are conceptual, excuse me, some are also drilling veins that outcrop. But what I've seen in a lot of these they're more traditional vein systems like you might expect, where you get a more planar vein body, where it's one vein that you're targeting and you can step out and drill a fence. What we're dealing with in this epizonal environment is a little bit different. There's a lot of different orientations and you're not just testing one of them. So it's a little harder to find that feeder right off the get-go. But the fact that we're seeing this kind of widespread mineralization with different orientations and different styles over a really broad area indicates that when we do find that feeder, it's going to probably be pretty impressive. So these are our results. And now I wanted to talk about what these orogenic systems look like and what the upside here is at the Goldrange Project. So in this graphic here, I've taken a well-known academic representation of what the orogenic systems look like in the continuum from the upper brittle environment, where you get epizonal systems, all the way down to the ductile environment, where you get mesozonal systems. At the Braylorn deposit, which is a couple hundred kilometers southeast of us, you're quite a bit deeper. You're in the 6-8 kilometer kind of range. That deposit has been mined for 2 kilometers depth from surface. So these systems go a long ways vertically. And in theory, it goes from a mesozonal up to epizonal. It's unlikely that you would mine 8 or 5 kilometers worth of material or drill that. But what I'm getting at is that there's always going to be a deep source for these systems. And the lightning bolt analogy here, I really do feel it works quite well. And I was lucky enough to find an image that looks similar to this diagram. And what I'm trying to get at here is that when you get higher up in a system, you get a larger lateral expression. And that's what we're seeing at Goldrange. And that's what you see at Donlin, for example, where it's instead of being a long, narrow trend of mineralization, you get a more rectangular trend of mineralization. And the significance of that is that we've got a lot of room to test laterally in both directions, but we also still have that vertical component to test. So, everybody goes on about blue sky potential. And this is a pretty promotional slide, but I also think it's a good analogy because I think it's kind of like an iceberg. There's iceberg potential versus blue sky potential. We tested about 10% or a little less than 10% of this 3 by 2 kilometer surface expression, but we really haven't got going on the depth expression of it either. So, we think there's a lot of potential to drill in multiple different directions. And, the future looks really bright for this project, given what we're getting on the initial program. And to put that into context and really just to drum home how these results are significant, I've manipulated a slide that a good friend and advisor, Francis McDonald, one of the founders and executive VP at Kennerland Minerals, created as part of their discovery study, which I believe was released either last year or during the winter of this year. And they went and digitized all the historic drilling in Quebec to compare the significance of their Renault discovery. And what they found is that, there's kind of like, there's set numbers in gram meters, which is grade multiplied by thickness, where if you see that after a discovery program, it could be really significant. And what we're seeing here, we drilled just shy of 5,000 meters, and we hit it on our the fourth out of 14 assays we've received. We hit just shy of 62 gram meters. At Hemlo, the David Bell deposit there, which I believe is over 4 million ounces, part of the Hemlo mine, which Barrick has, you get their initial drill program, they did 132 holes versus our 14. And as you can see on here, there's only 4 intercepts displayed. These are the best intercept from each hole. Their median value was 21 out of 132 holes, but it took them until hole 20 to hit over a 100 gram meter intercept. So where we're at, we're sitting in pretty comfortable company, and we're really encouraged with this. And I'm really looking forward to the rest of our assay results, but I'm also really looking forward to an expanded program in 2022. So that's it for now. Stay tuned for more results, and always feel free to reach out. You can get a hold of Gayle if you want more technical questions, or me if you want more questions about the company, or both of us if you want to chat together. Thanks a lot.